training and marketing services. We're the first ones in Australia to specialise in that area. So our core business is LinkedIn lead generation. So using LinkedIn to reach out to key decision makers for businesses and basically setting appointments with them.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Great. And how did you get into LinkedIn?
How I got into LinkedIn? Well, when I first moved to Melbourne and I was working in digital marketing, I was a salesperson. And I asked my boss what the best target audience would be for digital marketing services, and he said plastic surgeons. So I made a list of all of them in Melbourne, went and knocked on all their doors and couldn't get past the practice manager. So I tried cold calling them all, couldn't get past the practice manager. And I just signed up to LinkedIn and I thought, why don't I try this LinkedIn thing? So I contacted 10 surgeons on LinkedIn, got 6 responses, had 4 meetings and made 1 sale. But the interesting thing was, the other salespeople in the company were just dealing with all the leads that they got given to them, which could have been plumbers, artists, all sorts of different types of businesses, whereas I was dealing with the ideal target audience. So that was a relatively big sale that I got from contacting 10 surgeons. And so the next week I contacted 20 and we scaled that business relatively quickly. We went from 8 employees to over 120 within the course of 18 months. It was sold to an ASX listed group, and at which time I decided to start my business specialising in LinkedIn marketing.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And fast forward to today, so tell us a little bit about the extent of what you're doing today.
Well, at the end of last year, we did some calculations as to the amount of impact that we've had with our clients, and we generated over $400 million worth of sales from the leads that we generated on LinkedIn exclusively. So that's the kind of impact we're having. And mainly it's business-to-business type companies. We do a lot of it in the financial services space as well. When I set my business, one of the goals that I set in the first year was to sign up one of the top Big 4 banks. And so we got Westpac on board as a client very early on, which introduced me to BT Financial Group, which has 400 to 500 licensees underneath them. So every month once a year I would go around to every city in Australia and present to all these licensees. And so a lot of them came on board as clients. So we've sort of specialised in the financial services space quite extensively.
Yeah, fantastic. And tell us what's the most fun thing about your role?
At the moment, I'm interviewing a lot of entrepreneurs that are making an impact through my interview series, LinkedIn Heroes. So I get to meet some awesome people that and get to network with some people, which I find really inspiring. So that's what I'm enjoying the most at the moment.
When it comes to LinkedIn, what are some of the tools that you're using? What are the tools of the trade that you generally recommend to your clients?
Well, everything's there right in front of you. It's just about how you use it, really. When it comes to any LinkedIn marketing, whether you're doing advertising, whether you're doing lead generation, whether you're just posting content, the first thing is you need to get your profile optimized, set up effectively, because whatever you do on LinkedIn, people are always going to check on your profile as part of the decision-making process, right? Not only that, but LinkedIn's become more important as part of a customer journey. So if you hop onto Google and search for somebody's name before a meeting, chances are the first thing that you're going to see in a search result is their LinkedIn profile. And what most people have on the LinkedIn profile is a version of their CV, right? I always say to people, if you're using LinkedIn to get more customers, your CV could quite possibly be the most boring piece of content that you could provide a potential client.
For someone that's just getting started on LinkedIn, potentially a lot of our market is people who are, they've probably gone and set up a very basic LinkedIn profile, but they haven't really thought about using LinkedIn as a marketing platform. I mean, what's your advice to them? Yeah,
for somebody who's just getting started on LinkedIn, it's important to set up your profile correctly. And so if you're using it to get more customers, then write the profile with the customer in mind. So it needs to be in customer-centric language, very similar to what a website would be like, but a personal website. So identify the problem that your customer has first and foremost, then go into the solution and always finish with a call to action. So it doesn't need to be some salesy contact me to get you free, blah, 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 but advise people on what to do next. The same methodology that we would use on a website for conversion-based design. On a website you'd have conversion hierarchy, what's the primary objective you want somebody to do when they get to a page, where you have the same sort of thing on LinkedIn. What do we want people to do? We want them to connect with us? Do we want them to go to our website? Do we want them to call us? Tell people what to do next and invite them to take the next step.
And generally, what is that next step? Do you have a best practice when it comes to that? Is it to try and get people off LinkedIn and onto a landing page or a website or something along those lines, or does it depend on the client?
It's very much a relationship-based platform. So I would encourage people to connect on LinkedIn. If you're communicating with them, if you're sending them a message, I always tell my clients, the first thing you want to do is take the conversation offline. You don't want to be going back and forth on LinkedIn messages about, what it is that you do and all that kind of stuff, because you have no control then over the sales process. The mistake I see a lot of LinkedIn marketers make is they'll send a message and they're like, oh, here's our website, here's a link to our landing page, here's our test. You're giving away all the information, you lose complete control over the sales process. So one thing that you can always be sure that people want to talk about is themselves. So if you show interest in the other person, don't give them too much information about what you do, and then invite them to have a discussion offline, you're going to get the best results.
Yeah, great. What would you say are the core skills that someone needs to be good at LinkedIn marketing?
Core skills to be effective at LinkedIn marketing, again, it's about relationships, right? So if you can't build relationships offline, you're going to have a very difficult time trying to do it online.
Yeah.
You need to be able to build a relationship with somebody. That's fundamental to anything on social media. Never assuming a need. So if you're contacting somebody, don't assume that they need your services. If you're in search engine optimization and I contact you and say, I can, and I know for a fact I can get you to the top of Google and get you more leads than anyone else, for me to tell you that would be it wouldn't be a very smart move, put it that way, because I don't know if you want to get to the top of Google, whether you want more leads yet. So it's more a case of me going, well, hey, I've had a look at your LinkedIn profile. I'm interested in finding more about your objectives. Can we take the conversation offline, have a discussion so I can find out more about what you're doing to see if there's opportunity to work together. But never assuming a need and being able to build relationships is fundamental. Whatever you do, people are always going to look at your profile. So making sure that that's, doing its job of building your credibility. Because lead generation on LinkedIn, I think it's very similar to the old days of telemarketing or cold calling, right? But the difference is with cold calling, the first thing you have to do when you call somebody is you have to explain who you are and why you're calling. You don't actually have to do either of those things on LinkedIn, because people can click on your name and read your profile. And it may seem like a subtle difference, but that's what we call in marketing like an inbound activity. Somebody's clicked on your name means they've asked for the information. So it's very different than you just pushing it upon them.
Yeah, great. LinkedIn, like the other social media networks, is changing pretty fast all the time. They're constantly updating, and you're seeing that now, particularly with some of their paid advertising formats, are starting to roll out a lot of the features that the Facebook ad platforms had for a while. But what would your advice be to people who, to maintain, keep up to date with the changing LinkedIn landscape?
Well, you're absolutely right. LinkedIn is changing all the time. It was only a couple of years ago that Microsoft acquired LinkedIn for $26 billion or whatever it was. In order to keep up to date with all of the different changes, I think the LinkedIn blog is quite a useful resource. They're always releasing product updates. I think you can get a bit overwhelmed with all of the different pieces of information that they're providing there. There's a lot of changes going on every day. So it's important to follow people that are in this industry. Like myself, for example, I'm always making sure that people are up to date with the changes that they need to be aware of. But you're right, it is changing all the time. And one of the cool things about LinkedIn, when you compare it to the other social platforms at the moment, is the amount of organic reach that you can get from content. Because on Facebook, 2-3 years ago, you could build up your likes and you got a big audience and you could post stuff for free and everyone sees it, and then all of a sudden Facebook changes its algorithm and now you can't reach any of them. It doesn't matter if you've got 100,000 followers, you got to pay to reach them. Which I would have thought would have happened on LinkedIn by now, but it hasn't. We've seen engagement grow on LinkedIn by 300% over the last 18 months, and then in the first quarter of this year it was up 24%, so it's still increasing. And engagement, it basically means the amount of time that people are spending on there. So yes, LinkedIn's got 700 odd members, but now they're spending 3 times as much time as they were a couple of years ago on the platform, in the news feed.
And what do you put that down to? So why do you think people are starting to spend more time on LinkedIn?
So the reason that people are spending more time on LinkedIn is because LinkedIn's algorithm is getting smarter and it's providing better quality content to its users. So when you log on, the news that you see in the news feed is more relevant, therefore you're going to spend more time on there. So it's a credit to what LinkedIn have been doing behind the scenes.
Yeah, great. So you talked about organic reach, and this thing of saying your content that you post to LinkedIn. One thing to set up a profile, but then you've got to be posting relevant content to the audience that you're targeting. So how does the algorithm, when you post content, how does the algorithm work? Like how does it, if you get a lot of engagement, it shows it to more people. But overall, what are your thoughts on the algorithm, how it works, and how people can use it to their benefit?
Well, the way that the LinkedIn algorithm works at the moment is still very basic, so it's going to evolve. And we don't know exactly how it works because it's not like LinkedIn gives us a formula. So at a very basic level, there will be an automated scan of your content to make sure that it's not spammy. So be looking for things like outbound links and stuff like that. The next stage is it'll show it to a portion of your network. So let's say you got 100 connections, it'll show it to 10 people, right? And out of those 10 people, if like 2 or 3 of them like or comment on it, then 20-30% engagement rate's pretty good. Then maybe it'll show it to half of your network. And then if the engagement rate's still good, then it'll show it to all of your network. If you get to a point where you've shown it to 100 of your followers, and you've got 100 followers, and your engagement rate's 30% or more than that, then you've got a piece of content on your hands that could go viral.
And in those circumstances, do you recommend that's when potentially someone might consider putting a paid budget behind it?
Well, the interesting thing is on LinkedIn is the content that will do well organically is from a personal profile. And you cannot sponsor content from a personal profile only for a company page. So I think that's something that we'll probably see change. But that's a very interesting one because at the moment, you can't sponsor content that's doing extremely well because the stuff that does really well is your personal profile and you can only sponsor stuff through a company page. So it's a bit interesting.
Obviously work with a lot of different clients on helping them to improve their marketing efforts on LinkedIn. What have you found are the common themes in relation to content that's produced? So how do you create content that people engage with? Because that's what you want, right? The dream is to post a piece of content, whether it's your company brand or get your staff to share that content. But what is it? What content performs the best?
Well, it starts with your audience because a lot of people don't have control over their audience. They sit there on LinkedIn and they accept, reject, and they wonder why they're getting all these sales letters or recruitment letters in their inbox. It's just a reflection of your network. So if you're not in control of proactively building your network with the right people in your target audience, first of all, you're going to have a very diluted network. So you need to be in control of that. And because it's one thing having people engaging with your content, but you want people that are in your target audience. You don't want to have this big popularity on LinkedIn with people that aren't relevant for your business. It's a complete waste of time. It's not a popularity contest. If you're on there to do business, you want to make sure it's the right kind of people. So first of all, make sure that your network is in your target audience. That's the first thing. Second thing is find out what is going to add value to them. So I would suggest making a list of 10 of your top 10 clients, call them up and saying, how can I add value to what you're doing through content? And find out, what are the questions that they want the answers to. And then what you'll do is you start posting stuff and they will give you live feedback as to what's working. You'll soon find out what's working, what's not. The mistake that a lot of content creators make is that they start providing content and looking at engagement from people that aren't even in their target audience. And before you know it, they're serving this market which they're never going to do business with anyway, which is a complete waste of time.
And so if you have someone potentially who has maybe changed careers, they've changed industry, they're potentially was in a sales role, but then they've moved into a sales role in maybe a different industry or something along those lines, would you then recommend them going back and going through their network and cleaning out the people that aren't necessarily relevant, or what's your advice when?
No, I think it's good to have a big network. I would just be proactively building it in the right areas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's more of a focus on building the network in the area that you're currently working in.
Yeah, and because when somebody sends you a connection request, one of the questions I get asked a lot is, do I accept? If they're not relevant to what I do, blah, blah, blah. And my answer is if they could be connected to somebody that's relevant to what you do, then it's worth connecting because you're building your network. Like if you do a search on LinkedIn, the people you're going to see first in the search results are your first degree connections. And then you're going to see your second degree connections. So all you're doing by increasing your connection base is making that second degree connection component bigger. And that's where the value is on LinkedIn. Like the people think that, LinkedIn's great to reach out to key decision makers because you can target people in a certain industry, in a certain job title, certain location, and all that stuff's true. But what makes it even more powerful is most of them are either in your first degree network or second degree network. So if I reach out to you and we know 10 of the same people, there's a much higher chance you're going to respond to me than if you don't know me from a bar of soap.
Yeah. Are there any trends that you're seeing on LinkedIn?
Look, I think that one of the biggest trends, obviously, is the engagement. So the amount of time that people are spending on there is really important. I think that's a tribute to LinkedIn's algorithm and the way that they're serving better, more relevant content. LinkedIn advertising is an area to watch. They're always making improvement in LinkedIn ads, and I think we've got to get past the old traditional mindset of we try it once, it doesn't work, therefore LinkedIn ads doesn't work, and you walk away and you don't try it again for 2 years. It's evolving so much all the time. So now you've got like website retargeting. So first of all, someone goes through to your website and then they can see your ads served to them on LinkedIn. You can do things like audience matching. A lot of the things that you could do on Facebook advertising, which makes them so powerful, you can now do on LinkedIn. So you don't want to write it off too early. I think now it's becoming more and more effective. Yes, it's expensive, but the statistics are that people trust content from LinkedIn 3 times as much as the other social platforms, because in the business context, and more businesses are starting to catch on to this, and it's just reflected in the statistics. The fact that people are spending 3 times as much time on there just goes to show that they're trusting the content on there more.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're saying that people are spending 3 times longer on there, because that ultimately means 3 times more inventory, and therefore it should be bringing down the cost per clicks on the paid ad format. So,
yeah,
is there any paid ad format that you like a lot, or you recommend a lot to clients, or what's the?
So at the moment, in terms of what are the paid ads is not something that is a big area of my business. We're still getting the best results from direct response lead generation on LinkedIn and posting organic content. We're still getting such a great reach from organic content, and at the moment it's not slowing down. It's really interesting. We're seeing the trend continue, and it may get to a point where LinkedIn want to, they get enough engagement and they want to drive up the paid ads, and they'll reduce the amount of organic content. It remains to be seen whether they follow the likes of Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, who have all gone down that path.
Is there anyone out? Obviously, you're doing a fantastic job, promoting yourself and your company on LinkedIn. Is there anyone else out there you think's doing a really good job on LinkedIn marketing?
There's plenty of LinkedIn marketers that are doing a great job, but I think one of the big things is there's this illusion that if you post content and you get loads of followers and loads of engagement, that's going to translate into business, and it's not necessarily the case. I know a lot of and I won't mention any names, but I know a lot of LinkedIn influencers that have got 50,000 followers, that they're getting 25,000 views every video they post, that literally can't pay the rent, because unless you've got a system to translate that into return on investment, you can be wasting a lot of time. So you get there and you realise it's not the case. So it's a big mistake that you can make. So I would like all my clients to have a model for return on investment before they start posting content. And a lot of that comes down to direct response lead generation. So if you reach out to 100 people with direct messages to set appointments, all of a sudden you've got 15, 20 appointments you're having every month. That's a system that translates into return on investment. All of a sudden you start posting content as well, then all of those 15, 20 people you're sitting down with see you as an expert, they see you as an authority, your conversion rates go up. They're not speaking to 3 other people in your industry to try and get quotes for everyone. They're only speaking to you because they see you as the expert. There's no negotiation on price, all that sort of stuff. So I see content as a way to really leverage, a lead generation program or that's generating return on investment already.
Great. What about brands? Are there any companies out there you think? So there's a couple of things here. One, they're doing a good job of having a great presence on LinkedIn, but 2, I think one of the untapped resources on LinkedIn is sharing content across employee networks. Do you know of any companies or any companies that spring to mind that you think are doing a pretty good job on LinkedIn?
I don't follow a lot of them, to be honest, like the companies that are doing well. But LinkedIn do a good job of pointing out the ones that are the campaigns that are doing well with their case studies online and stuff. But so there's none that springs to mind.
Yeah, no problem. How do you mentioned sort of setting up a system for success? I mean, what are some of the key metrics that you use or you recommend to your clients to use to measure the performance of their LinkedIn marketing?
Yeah, I think that anything you do in marketing should translate directly to return on investment. So when you look at metrics to how to measure success, I think there's I think things like likes and comments and shares, they have their place. I mean, basically, if you get more likes, comments, and shares, as we discussed, you're going to get more eyeballs on your content. But I don't think that that's necessarily where your primary focus should be. I think everything in marketing should have a direct return on investment. So when I'm running campaigns for clients in the lead generation aspect, and let's say we are reaching out to 100 people, if we send 100 connection requests, on average, across all the industries I've worked in, 50% of those will accept. So if you send 100 connection requests, you've got 50 new connections on average. If you then send those new connections a message asking them for a telephone appointment or a face-to-face meeting, you should get between 10 to 30% conversion rate. So let's be conservative, say you get 10%. So you send 50 messages, you've got 5 appointments. Now you want to know, out of those 5 appointments, how many sales transactions you get, what's the average value of a client. I mean, this is all pretty basic business stuff. But if you say you get 1 sale from those 5 meetings and your average client's worth 10 grand, then you've got a scalable model. There's no reason why next month you can't reach out to 500 people instead of 100 people, but you can have a predictable outcome. And then what you'll find is, as you amplify content, so your likes and your shares and all those things increase, you'll find that those, when you have those 5 meetings, maybe you'll get 2 sales, or maybe the average value of your client will go up, and those are sort of things that you should be measuring.
Yeah, you say they're relatively basic stuff, but it's it's amazing how many people never actually sit down and go through and try and work this out, right?
Yeah, no, without question, it's the biggest mistake is that people make on LinkedIn is they measure the wrong things.
Great, that's good advice. So if you think about a course in LinkedIn marketing, I mean, what are the key outcomes? So if you were going to put someone or recommend a course or something along those lines, what would say be the key outcomes? What's the essential knowledge that people need to know about LinkedIn marketing?
Yeah, so when we do, I've got a program called LinkedIn Fundamentals course, and we start off with insights, and basically so making people understand where LinkedIn fits in the whole spectrum of social media and online activity and the customer journey and all that kind of stuff. So we start there. Then the first thing is the profile. So we have a process called profile optimization, which is basically a 22-step process. We've designed for 3 outcomes. One is to make your profile rank at the top of the search results, not only on LinkedIn, but also on Google for relevant search phrases. And then it's to make it stand out from competition. So normally, if you look at your competitors' LinkedIn profiles and what they've got on there, it's about doing more than that. So I'll give you an example. I did a talk for the youth network at Westpac, right? It's 150 professionals that work at Westpac that are under the age of 30. So you think they're all tech savvy, right? They probably haven't licked a postage stamp before, right? And I asked them, I said, who's got a recommendation on their LinkedIn profile? 3 hands go up out of 150. I said, who's got more than one recommendation? More than one recommendation on the LinkedIn profile? There's only one person in the room. And so all of a sudden, all you need to do to stand out in that context is to have 2 recommendations on your LinkedIn profile. I mean, how hard is that? It's not that difficult. But people do actually have to log in and submit the recommendation, but then it's much more credible. One of the reasons I think we're all, looking at LinkedIn profiles as opposed to a website is because of that credibility factor. You can see, that social proof. So that's the second objective. The third objective is basically making sure a profile converts visitors to leads, and it's about having those calls to actions and things that we discussed already. So that's the profile side of things. The next thing is how do you build trust online? So social proof is a big component of what we talk about, and recommendations is a part of that. But also, people want to be connected to connected people. So one of the important milestones to get over on LinkedIn, and I always say don't build your connections with irrelevant people, but it is important to build your connections. You've got to get over the milestone of 500, because once you get over 500 connections, it'll say 500 plus on your profile. Yeah. And it's interesting, the conversion rate when you reach out to connect with prospects will shoot up by about 30% just when you get over that milestone. Because crowds follow crowds. People don't want to be connected to people that aren't connected. So social proof's a big part. How do you build trust, especially if you're in a trust-based industry like legal or financial services, professional services, things like that's really important. And then we go into how do you find key decision makers. So using the advanced search tool on LinkedIn becomes a big part of that. And also, a lot of businesses and salespeople, they don't have a niche. And on LinkedIn, it works a lot better if you do have a niche. Because let's say, for example, you're targeting dentists. if you start growing your network in that industry, it won't take long before, you know, you've got 500 dentists in Melbourne that you're connected to. When you reach out to the next one, he's going to see that. He's going to see, you know, or you've got all these mutual connections that are in the same industry as him, and is much more likely to respond favourably to what you do. So it's always good to choose a niche, and then use the advanced search to reach people. So you don't just use the search bar at the top, you know, where you just punch keywords in. You use the advanced search, so we're looking for keywords that are in a specific place in the profile. So what's their job title? What industry are they in? You know, what have they got down as their location? And that way you can become really targeted. And people ask me a lot as well, like, you know, should I upgrade to premium? And the illusion is that if you upgrade to a premium account, that people are just going to jump out of the computer and throw their credit cards at you. It doesn't work like that, right? you have to already be using LinkedIn to get a return on investment for premium to work. But one of the cool things about premium is you can target by things like company size. So how big is the company that you're looking after, and those sort of metrics I find really valuable. So personally, I use a Sales Navigator account. And then it's about social selling, right? So how do you pull the conversation offline? What not to write when you contact people? And then the final part of the LinkedIn Fundamentals course is about content marketing and thought leadership, and building a brand, which, you know, is something which I think companies have to understand is more of a longer term strategy. Like, you've really got to be doing that for a year before you can start looking at like how you can actually measure success. But the cool thing about it is most companies want immediate return on investment, and so they don't do it. And so it's a very much a red ocean when you're just doing direct response lead generation. Whereas when you build a brand, you get to a point where it's like this. Oh, hang on a second. There's no competition here because no one else has been doing it. And I'm very fortunate that that's where my business is at these days. You know, it's not very often that these days where like I get contacted by a business and they're like, oh, we're getting 3 quotes from 3 LinkedIn marketing companies. You're just one of them, and you know, we're going to find out who's got the best price. It doesn't really work like that anymore because they perceive me as the leader. You know, if they've been following my content, they perceive me as the thought leader. So normally there's not any negotiation on price and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, great. So just one of the final questions. If you rewind 5 years, you know, what are some of the things you wish you knew 5 years ago about LinkedIn, or what have been some of the tips or the hacks, you know, you've learned that have made a really big difference?
Well, if I rewind 5 years, LinkedIn was a very different platform back then, because I was generating about 100 leads a month 5 years ago, and you look at my profile and you see no activity. I'm not posting any content or anything. It's all happening behind the scenes with direct response lead generation. And so, I'm just very fortunate that I was using it back then, because content wasn't really working. Most of the content marketers that are using LinkedIn these days have only been doing it for a year or two. But they missed out on, you know, like actually getting the fundamentals right of how to generate a return on investment. Because a lot of them are like creating all this content. They're like, how do I turn this into return on investment? Because they did it the wrong way around, I think. So I've just been very fortunate. So I don't really have any regrets, to be honest. Like anything I would do differently, I'm very fortunate I did it the way I did it. But I think it's attributed to the fact that I was using it as a salesperson to start with. I was thinking, how do I get more appointments? How do I get more leads? Rather than, how do I just build this popularity and get more followers? I think, you know, there's 2 different ways of looking at it.
And are there any tips or, you know, hacks? You know, often social media marketing can be very tactical in nature.
Yes.
Is there anything you've had a bit of an aha moment that's made a huge difference to the returns you're getting on LinkedIn?
There's loads, yeah. And it's always evolving, but I guess I mean, there's in terms of hacks.
You know, so you see little things like, you know, people sometimes use hashtags. Often people like tag a lot of people in their posts, or anything with identifying the right people in the search results, or anything, little things like that.
Yeah, so I mean, when you're posting content, like without question at the moment, video is performing the best by far. If you start doing long form articles, pictures and all that stuff, they do well as well, but video is doing the best. So the first thing would be to produce videos on LinkedIn. About 1% of the members on LinkedIn bother to do it. And then it's about getting engagement. And people think, you just want to get engagement over time. It's not the case at all. You want to get engagement fast. So the quick way to do it is by tagging people in your posts or using hashtags. That's a bit of a hack. Like I don't know. I don't do that very often just because I don't need to now. But if you're just starting out on LinkedIn marketing, absolutely tag people in your posts. Tag me in the post if you want. There's a good chance that I'll like it, and then you've got exposure to a much wider community. Hashtags, people are just starting to use them. They're still relatively new, so there's a couple of ways that you can use those. I would keep the hashtags very broad if you're looking to get traffic to your post through hashtags. Because of the fact that they're not being widely used. And then also, the only way to create a library of content on LinkedIn is by using hashtags. So a good example is, my interview series, LinkedIn Heroes, is a hashtag LinkedIn Heroes. But if you click on that hashtag, or you search that hashtag, or you follow that hashtag, you'll find all the previous episodes. But that's the only way you can find them. That's how LinkedIn's working with the library of content. It's not like YouTube where you can have a channel and all your videos are there. So if you don't use hashtags, then there's a good chance that your content will just, as it makes its way through the newsfeed, will just disappear. And if no one looks at it for 6 months, there's a good chance it'll disappear off LinkedIn altogether. And these videos aren't ending up on Google for one reason or another. So,
and with video, you mentioned video. I guess you'd always recommend that they do native video, they actually upload it into LinkedIn as opposed to posting, say, to a YouTube video.
Absolutely. Yeah, always use native, because you think about the objective that the social media platforms has is LinkedIn wants to keep its users on LinkedIn. And so if you start posting links or you're sharing YouTube videos which take people off LinkedIn, LinkedIn's not going to give you as much exposure. There are instances where it makes sense to share a YouTube video, like if you want to grow your YouTube channel followers. So from time to time I do share a YouTube video, just literally because I want to share my YouTube, I want to get more subscribers on YouTube, because I don't want to be single point sensitive. There's no, the way I look at it is if I've got 30,000 followers on LinkedIn and they change their algorithm tomorrow, and I can't reach that audience, it's a bit of a shame. So I try to keep, I'm very active on Instagram as well. Facebook to some extent, Twitter, YouTube. So yeah.
So it's definitely about ensuring that LinkedIn. It's not all about LinkedIn. You've got to have a broader social media marketing strategy.
Yeah. I use the 80-20 rule. So I put 80% of my eggs in the LinkedIn basket, but I'm still active on all the other social platforms. But I've found Instagram to be quite effective. More recently, so I'm very active on there as well. But I love LinkedIn because it's business to business. There's no other platform on which I can get the same return on investment.
Yeah. Great. And just finally, any tips you'd have, any final tips you'd have for people just getting started, or even any professionals on LinkedIn?
Sure. Just I guess try and build your network with people that have got a bit of influence on LinkedIn. You'll find that your content goes a lot further, and if you tag people in your posts and things like that, you'll find that your reach goes a lot farther. And it's about consistency as well. Being consistent. So if you are going to be posting on LinkedIn, make sure you're doing it regularly. The more you do it, the better. So don't get caught up in making sure everything's perfect, because the volume is actually way more important. Actually, somebody you should follow, who I forgot to mention, is Gary Vaynerchuk. So Gary Vaynerchuk in the last 6 months has gone all in on LinkedIn. And he did the Instagram thing, he did the Facebook thing, the Twitter thing. He knows when a platform is ripe for organic content, and he's identified that on LinkedIn. And how often is Gary Vaynerchuk posting on LinkedIn? Every 4 hours, right? So he's posting, and he seems to be making his way to the top of the newsfeed all the time. And so you can look at people like that and go, okay, well, why are they doing that? Why are they posting every 4 hours? When you think about it, the amount of engagement that he's getting on a daily basis is going to be a lot higher if he's posting more content. Because instead of me just being able to like one post, I can like 6 posts in a day, right? And so he's going to get a lot more engagement than other people. So posting regularly is way more important than the quality of content. I mean, it's interesting the amount of private messages or little comments I get about spelling mistakes in my posts, but it's a conscious decision that it's more important for me to get more volume out there than it is for every post to be perfect. And so make sure that you don't dwell too much on getting everything, perfect. And with that, if you are creating videos, they don't need to be long. 1 minute, 2 minutes is fine. In fact, the shorter they are, the better they do. Most people aren't watching all of your content. So if you do have a 10-minute video, why don't you chop it up into 5 videos and you've got 5 bits of content, for example.
Yeah, so I think Facebook's now saying a lot of the larger agencies, they need to get their message across in 8 to 10 seconds on video on Facebook. So
is there an optimal length you target for video content on LinkedIn?
I just think in terms of optimal length for videos and things on LinkedIn, I think it's so much more about the value. Like if you're not providing value like up front, people are not going to watch it. But then again, like if you are providing value, there's no reason why it can't be 8 minutes, 9 minutes, because people are going to watch it. So make sure that you're always adding value, and that needs to be the primary objective with anything. Like I cringe when I see LinkedIn videos or even Facebook videos where people are like, "Oh, hello, happy Friday, here I am, happy, hello Facebook," or whatever it is, and they're not getting straight to the value, and it's a huge mistake. Or having these like long intro videos, it's a big no-no. You want to get straight to the content, straight to the value, so that you're not wasting people's time.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much.